Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and today Apple released iOS 13.2.2 to all supported iOS 13 devices. Now this was released to address issues with multitasking and some other things, so multitasking and RAM management, and then LTE issues and things like that, and this came in at a fairly small 134.8 megabytes on my iPhone 11 Pro, and on my iPhone XR it was under 100 megabytes, so it will vary depending on the device. Let's go ahead and take a look at the build number. The build number is 17B102, and this particular build addresses quite a few issues we had with iOS 13.1 and 2 and every version since. And the first thing you need to know, though, is if you're on iOS 13.3 betas and you want to go to this version, you'll have to use a computer with either iTunes on it, or with macOS Catalina, you can use the Finder, get the IPSW file, and load it on here. That's what I did with my iPhone 11 Pro Max, and this is working fine on this version now, but it does take a computer or iTunes in order to do that. Now, Apple has actually pushed a modem update for this version, so that should fix some issues with LTE, and specifically this update does fix issues with that, and I'll go over that in a moment. But the first thing that they address is the problem with apps quitting in the background, or what a lot of people call RAM management. So maybe you have music open, you have Instagram or Notes, or maybe you have the Home app, any number of things, and then you want to go back into, say, YouTube. It's no longer reloading like it was before. It's finally working like we expect it to work, and that's a great thing. Now, RAM management is a pretty big deal when it comes to the iPad, especially if you're trying to multitask and get some work done. So maybe you're trying to multitask, you have a website open, you want to go into Safari, for example, or use the App Store, or maybe you just want to go back to YouTube and it keeps reloading on you. Well, it doesn't seem to be doing that now. So you'll see YouTube has not reloaded. When I went into that, if I go into music, it just refreshed what was on the screen but didn't reload the whole app. So it's definitely a better experience overall when it comes to that. Now, this also resolves an issue where iPhone may temporarily lose cellular service after a call. So maybe you placed a phone call, you end that call, and all of a sudden your cell signal is gone. This fixes that issue. Finally, they fixed an issue I've been mentioning for quite some time, not only on my 11 Pro Max, but also my XS Max, and that's where cellular data may temporarily be unavailable. And that usually happened to me when I was switching from Wi-Fi to cellular, and it would just not allow me to connect. In fact, here's some examples. You'll see here, if I disconnect from Wi-Fi, I go into YouTube, there's just nothing there. There's no cellular data. In fact, if I go to Safari, it also says that cellular data could not be activated. And I know that the SIM card works. I've used it in other phones, and I've also used it in Android phones and had no issues. And it looks like they finally fixed the problem. And after a hard reboot, the problem is solved on my 11 Pro Max. So that is finally working properly. And I'm glad to see that. Now, the next thing is they've fixed an issue that causes replies to SMIME encrypted email messages between Exchange accounts to become unreadable. That problem is fixed. I know a lot of people that were using Outlook or using an Exchange account with an iPhone and was having a lot of problems with things just not being there. That should be fixed as well. And then it also addresses an issue where using Kerberos, or network authentication protocol that you may or may not be familiar with, single sign-on services in Safari, it may give you an authentication prompt when you're trying to use that, and that's been resolved as well. And then finally, it resolves an issue where charging may be interrupted on YubiKey Lightning-powered accessories. So maybe you're using YubiKey authentication, and it would stop charging if you were using that. So that's all been fixed in this particular update. There are no new features that they've mentioned. There's no changes or anything in any of these devices. And when it comes to the iPad, all of the changes are identical with the exception of the cellular data fixes, since most iPads don't have cellular, and if they do, apparently it wasn't an issue, so it's fixed on all of these devices. So everything should be, well, really how it should have been originally. Now, as far as battery life goes, well, I know a lot of people were very upset with battery life on iOS 13.2, and hopefully they address it. They haven't mentioned it specifically, so we don't really know what's going on with that, but it depends on what you've been on. But battery life does take a few days to know how it is overall, and can vary from person to person. I know of some people that are getting 12 hours of screen on time on an 11 Pro Max. On my iPhone 11 Pro Max, you'll see it. I just rebooted it and installed this, so I lost all the data, but I was getting about 9 hours of screen on time with the betas. So it can vary, but depending on the device you have, hopefully this will be improved for you. Now, as far as speed, well, on the oldest device here, which is the iPhone 8 Plus, it's fine. I haven't seen any issues. Scrolling is typically fast on iPhones in general, and apps are loading fast. So if you're opening an app up, whatever you're doing, I wouldn't expect any slowdowns. Everything feels nice and quick, and I think most people will be very happy with that. Now, I did run a Geekbench on these devices, on all of them, so I could show you, but I did find that scores were not as high as I thought. I ran them twice on the 11 Pro Max because they went down a little bit, but nothing significant. So if we take a look at the CPU history here, let's go back, we'll go to CPU, and let's find today. The score that I have is 1,298 and 3,061 for multi-core. If you take a look at the history, maybe a little while back, it's significantly lower on the multi-core score, but that could be because it's doing a bunch of things in the background to fix the phone itself. Now let's take a look at all the different ones together. Now here you can see I have my iPad Pro 12.9 from 2018 on the left, then the iPhone 8 Plus, then the iPhone XR, then the iPhone 11 Pro, and then the Pro Max. But you'll see that the scores are significantly better on the iPhone 11 Pro, and I think that's because the 11 Pro Max is doing a bunch of things in the background. So 3,519 for multi-core and 1,336 for single-core is higher than I've seen on any previous versions of iOS, at least on these devices. So I think that's really, really good. Now, if you're expecting major changes and things like that, you'll have to wait for iOS 13.3 or really iOS 14 when they announce that in June, and then it will release in September. So if you're looking for major new changes and features to the user interface, Apple usually reserves those until June, so I would not expect anything like that. We may see small tweaks to things. A couple updates back now, we actually have the change for changing video resolution on some of the phones. Hopefully they bring that to the iPhones other than the iPhone 11. It's kind of ridiculous that we can't get that yet, but even on things like the iPhone XR, there's no reason they couldn't do that. But you'll see we can see the actual resolution in the upper right, but we can't change the resolution by tapping on it like we can with the 11. So if you're waiting for features like that, we could see something like that with 13.3 by the time it's released, but I wouldn't expect its release for at least another month or so, and then we'll have maybe some minor bug fixes here and there, but no major features until iOS 14, I would imagine. That's it for iOS 13.2.2. Let me know if you've found anything else in the comments below or how your experience is with it as well. And also, I plan to do a follow-up, so be sure to check back for that, where we'll talk about if there's any other issues with it and things like that. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description as I always do. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and hit that notification bell if you'd like to see more of these videos as soon as they're released. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.